Hey everyone, James Williams, Director of Programs with MEF. So first of all, if you've only just joined us, apologies for the delay. We had a little problem with our streaming platform, but we're going to claw back a bit of time. And one of those is via cutting short the next session. So what do you get when you have one very excited industry analyst, one very knowledgeable and experienced MEF advisor in Brazil, and the MEF Director of Programs? Well, you get the next session, and we'll be looking at business messaging, indeed messaging across all of Latin America. So first up, I'd like to welcome Andy Jones from Mobile Squared.
Hi, James. How you doing? I'm glad you sorted your gremlins out, that's for sure.
Well, we have, and we're back on track. So nice that you could be with us. And next up is Mr. Mitchell Cutmore.
Hi, James. Hi, Andy. Good afternoon to you.
Mitch.
Good morning from me.
So I'm now going to hand over kind of to Andy because I'm meant to be a speaker on this one, which is cool. But off we go. There are only three of us. So let's get straight into it. And just to let everyone know, we're going to cut this short by about 10 minutes. So let's keep this one tight, chaps, and roll.
Okay, let me just bring my presentation up and then get confirmation that you guys can see my presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present 10 mind-blowing insights about the business messaging market in LATAM. It's very interesting to listen to what Charlie was saying about, the difference between data providers and analysts. So hopefully we've done a bit of analysis of the Latin America market, and I'll be very much open to some feedback as we go through. But shouldn't take very long. But really what I want to try and view of the messaging spend, the business messaging spend in Latin America, talk a little bit about the trends that we're starting to see, talk a little bit about the big opportunities and the key wins, and really just starting off by saying for 2020 SMS A2P revenues in total for Latin America were to the tune of 723 million. Now, we obviously had a very interesting year in 2020 with the pandemic coming along and many people going towards messaging as a new way or a better way to engage with their customers. And as a result of that, the market trends and the forecasts that we were predicting have changed hugely. And that's the job of an analyst, is to work out what's going on there. So what we forecast is by 2025 that there'll be $1.17 billion worth of revenue. That's kind of a 61% increase in the market over that kind of 5-year period. And that's really important because, SMS A2P messaging is the foundation for everything we do in business messaging. So what does it look like in LATAM? Need to do is first of all identify, we know about the country, 7.8% world population, 12% of the land mass, and we know that it's the biggest urbanization region out of all the regions we cover, which is great from a mobile operator perspective. It makes it easier to provide coverage and service when all your people are in urbanized areas. And really what we kind of do is we look at the demographic of people by kind of age and gender in the area, and kind of really try and look at what does the mobile ecosystem look like. So kind of we know from a world perspective the population, we know that in the kind of LATAM region. We also know that there are more mobile subscriptions than there are people, which kind of really presents as a problem with rich business messaging, because actually what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach the person and not multiple devices on the person. We're trying to meet our customers on the channels they prefer to engage in. So what we do at Mobile Squared is we look at unique mobile users. So in the LATAM region, we have around 408 unique mobile users. Now that's interesting in its own right, because 33% of the population do not have a phone at all. And obviously also we look at the demographics to say, well, who are the biggest users? So for the LATAM region, we know that kind of 28% of the market is in this area around here. So the kind of 30 to 49-year-olds, so the more affluent people, the people in full-time employment. But we can also see there's a huge amount of young people coming into the market, and these are going to be our next generation of customers. These are the people that will get their smartphone and adopt the technology on the smartphone, and predominantly, like we all did, stick with that for life. But the one thing we do know about those guys is 31% of those we can't reach at all. but the other kind of 67-ish% of those people have a unique mobile number which they consider as their own, and that is the mobile messaging channel that we use to engage with our customers. So, we look at the different countries within the region. We can work out, the kind of population density, the number of smartphone devices. But what we really try and look at is a couple of things. First of all, some people, 10%-ish, haven't got a smartphone. So the only way we're going to engage with those people in a business messaging perspective is by sending an SMS to those guys. Now we can send an SMS to the rest of the people as well, the Apple users, the Android users, and the other smartphone users, but they have rich business messaging capability. So we look at, from a regional perspective that, 75% of the market's Android, and then we've got, kind of 15-ish% with Apple. And that's important because we look at native messaging. Native messaging is when that message pops into your phone, you can look at it, respond to it, but you don't need to download an application. So from the device perspective, we know, kind of the Android percentage. So 75% of those have got Android. So that's a large market share. In 2020, kind of out of the smartphone marketplace, out of the Android marketplace, 86% of them potentially, sorry, I'm going on the wrong figure, I'll go to the right one. 28% of them had Android RCS capability. So that meant that kind of 71% of the Android base could still only receive an SMS, and that's because it wasn't enabled within the device. They hadn't downloaded the application, they haven't set the permissions. From that, not slightly less of those, but still a good percentage of those had actually opted in to receive an A2P rich business messaging, so kind of 23-ish% there. But if we project forward to 2025, what we start to see is that flips on its head. By that point in time, most Android users will have RCS capability and enabled that for A2P and certainly P2A solutions. So 69% of the population can be received with an SMS message, which is great. And that's the part of the population we're going to look at right now. So picking up on the kind of what happened in 2020. So from a kind of revenue perspective, LATAM was kind of the 7th largest revenue generating region, even though in terms of traffic, it was the 3rd largest traffic generator. So that means we kind of have a difference in pricing structure in the region, and potentially, there are some other issues there that are creeping into that we need to look at. What we did from a forecast perspective is we looked at the impact of the pandemic, and obviously that had a huge impact on A2P SMS business, where people were kind of forecasting that it would continue to grow and drop off. Actually, what we're now seeing is that SMS is truly here to stay, and people are now engaging with anger within that as a preferred channel to engage with their customers. As a result of the kind of COVID reset, the region, we saw kind of 37% uplift in our forecast revenues. So we know that market is growing, and now's really the time to make the opportunity out of that. So, interesting from an overall market perspective, but let's just look at two kind of things within that. First of all, we look at businesses. We say, okay, so where are the businesses within the countries, and we break those down by micro to large businesses. And as per the same profile as the rest of the world, we see that obviously the micro businesses make up the lion's share of the market. But when we look at revenue, and we go on to the revenue figures, we start to see that actually across all the industries that work in there, all the businesses there, only 3.1% are using A2P SMS. And that 3.1% of businesses generated 100% of the revenue, this kind of 723 million. So when we start to think about where that came from, actually, it's not rocket science. We know that 82% of that revenue came from those large businesses, and actually only 2.4% of large businesses were using it. So crikey, what an opportunity from a market perspective. If we start to educate our customers on how they can engage with their customers in a better way, we start to open up that market. And we only need a small percentage sharing shift of people adopting that to actually start to drive revenues up with significant growth. And this is important because as an industry where, we've been talking about A2P SMS being, kind of an outdated technology, and, rich business messaging, whether it's in RCS or WhatsApp coming along, actually the opportunity is to educate the customers to say, a customer's mobile telephone number, you can engage with them with an SMS message, and from that customer will draw some advantage, whether it's an update, an alert, whether it's one-time password, or whether it's even a customer care message. Actually, the customer will go to that, and that'll be a good way to engage with them. You can send them an email, we can try and call them, we can try and encourage them to use the web, but actually this is like a personal engagement. So let's try and make the most of this if we can. On the other side, there's obviously, what's going on in the market. The market's growing. Obviously, people see it as a way of making revenue through fraudulent ways of using that engagement with the customers to drive some bottom line growth without necessarily paying for that. So actually, the thing in the region is that 47% of the traffic is grey. And that, from a revenue perspective, if we look at what that means in 2020, is 205 million of that was grey route revenue. That means that the operators did not potentially see that revenue as A2P SMS, and that's revenue they've lost. And obviously operators understand this very well, and they're invested in next generation firewalls to make sure that they're capturing that revenue. But for most of the regions, there's still quite a long way to go. And also for most of the regions, there's new types of fraud coming along all the time. But actually what we know is that customers are starting to see these unsolicited messages now coming through saying, you've missed a delivery, you need to pay a fee to get it rescheduled. And because they are using delivery services, they're ordering things online, they tend to think, well, maybe that might be a legitimate message. But by stamping down on fraud, what we can start to see is there's another huge revenue opportunity there. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a view of what's going on in A2P SMS. It's been around for a while. It's performing really well. It does really what it says on the tin. But now we've got this rich business messaging capability. And what we think of as rich business messaging is actually something which is far more than SMS. It's very complementary to SMS, but it's more engaged around app replacement and replacing web experiences and live conversations with agents on the phone. It's around allowing a customer to conclude a transaction, regardless of what it is, within a mobile message session, and be assured that when they're dealing with that customer, they actually are dealing with the right person that they think they're dealing with. Their experience is fantastic, and it improves their satisfaction and it improves that whole supply chain. So within rich business messaging, there's lots and lots of things which add value. We can put carousels, so we can put a big catalogue of products out to the customer and they can select to that. We can put suggested actions within there, so we can allow them to purchase that. But the real benefit of rich business messaging over SMS is this conversational commerce. And for some reason, we have been, as an industry, struggling to move from a event-based, what does a message cost, to actually get and actually, working with the MEF, a huge effort into getting this description done, and basically making sure that we understand what a session is. And a session really means we're engaging with a chat with our customer, and it's a brilliant way to do it. We don't have to flip between apps. If we're using native apps, we don't have to download anything. It's all in there. It's responded to very well by chatbots. If you need to escalate to a call or a collaboration session, it's very easy to do that. But for some reason, we are not giving this message to our customers, saying, actually, there is a new way that we can engage with customers through mobile messaging, and it's a better way. And I'll kind of hopefully show you why it is a better way. So put it in perspective, really. So we've got 408 million unique users. So these are our customers. Out of that, we know that 369 million of those have a smartphone, but we're still sending them an SMS. I don't know why, but we are. And then at the bottom, there's 10% of people that have a non-smartphone, so they can only receive an SMS. But this plethora of customers that sit in the middle, the majority of those, 83% of the mobile subscriptions are using WhatsApp, 59% are using Messenger, 22% have got RCS capability, 15% use an Apple phone, so they've got iMessage and Apple Business Chat. So what we really need to do is start to think about how we engage better with those customers. If we look at SMS only, SMS is brilliant. It reaches everybody. Everybody that's got a phone, we can send an SMS to. If we look at smartphones, though, you know, kind of 91% of smartphone users have WhatsApp loaded on there. Yet we're still engaging with those guys via SMS. You know, so we need to start to think about how we're going to engage more. We're going to drive the number of messages up, drive the people into sessions, and then also sell the value-added services. Because fundamentally, what happens if you send an SMS is you get kind of an average of 11.5% response rate from that. If you send a rich business message, and we use RCS in this environment, you get 28.9% engagement. So you get far more engagement. It might cost you slightly more because you're using sessions and you may be selling geolocation and other bits and pieces, but actually it's driving that customer experience up. And if you look across all of the sectors, predominantly what it does do is it drives that engagement up. And one of the things that is important for particularly our retail customers is how they can move their customers to make a purchase from a messaging session. Now, this is not to say that rich business messaging offers the payment mechanism, but rich business messaging integrates in with the payment solutions which are native to the phone, whether it's using your credit card, Google Pay or Apple Pay. You can use that. And actually what we want to do is we want to say to a customer, look, here's a carousel of products. Would you like to buy those? Customer go, yeah, I'd love to buy those. And then allow them to pay within the messaging channel of their choice, using the payment method of their choice, and then allow them to receive an update that the order's been placed, receive a receipt, get some tracking on when the order's going to be delivered, get instructions on how to return it. It makes the experience a lot better. And that is why rich business messaging drives up at least 100% more engagement from the messages that we're sending out to the market. Okay, so we talk about use cases, and I'm quickly going to go over this. If we look at all of the use cases in the marketplace generally, so if we take the average, kind of what we see is the average reminders is kind of the biggest use case. Yeah, in terms of the verticals, 16 market verticals, most of those are using reminders. But actually, we know from a revenue perspective, that's slightly different. But our use cases we look at are alerts. So we say we're just sending a standard bit of information. It's going to tell you that something is happening or don't do something. So it doesn't need to be long. Customer care, where we want to engage in conversation, drive, upsell, cross-sell, give a good customer experience. Marketing promotions, we want to kind of send the customer a voucher, send the customer a bespoke offer, but we don't want them to go to the web to engage with that. We want them to engage with that through the messaging session. Of course, we want them to purchase. You know, reminders are vitally important, particularly in public service, you know, like healthcare, where people are scheduled for an appointment, they can't make it. We want to make it very easy for them to change that appointment, which is very convenient for the patient, but also very convenient for the health provider because they're saving money and time through wasted appointments. And then we've got this good old security, these one-time passwords and kind of, you know, two-factor authentications. Now, finance is the largest A2P sector in total, and that's because it predominantly uses security to verify transactions. Changing the profile slightly, if we look at the revenue, the total spend of revenue, actually, while reminders are used businesses, it is security alerts which are driving up that kind of engagement for the customer. So very simple messages, they don't need to be conversational, contain 6 digits or some characters to validate your identity. So actually, when we start to look at how rich business messaging can impact that, we probably say, let's leave alerts and security to one side. Is rich business messaging a threat to those areas? Potentially it could add some value by providing the customer with more information, but it's not in essence a threat. The threat would more come from a new security service being developed that doesn't need to send a mobile message. So kind of the areas where we need to start driving the benefits of rich business messaging are these kind of customer care, marketing promotions and reminders. Because at the moment, you know, A2P is servicing a role. We can't move from A2P to P2A within SMS. It works better within rich business messaging. And, you know, it's time that we started capitalizing that by educating our customers on how much better their experience could be engaged. Now, also, if we look at, going back to WhatsApp, that is the lion's share of the market in the smartphone from a messaging application. In Latin America in 2020, there were 32 billion business-generated messages. Now, if we applied a simple kind of formula to that, not that WhatsApp is charged in the same way as SMS, we start to see that actually if we were charging, kind of 1.6 cents per message, that would have generated another £540 million worth of revenue. Now, I don't think we've lost that on the bottom line of SMS, but what we've seen that is it's incremental revenue growth for the overall messaging market. So when we look at our models for rich business messaging, WhatsApp is the biggest competitor to the native business messaging marketplace. If you're a mobile operator, you can provide, your native messaging, SMS, RCS, and obviously you've got the ability to communicate with Apple phones via iMessage or SMS. But WhatsApp have got a huge market share within that. So that's kind of a little whistle-top tour. And I'm trying to claw back some time. I don't know how well I've done. So I'm kind of just going to leave you with what I think is the opportunity right now. The opportunity for the mobile messaging marketplace is to push out grey routes and get the number of, the fraudulent messages down to a sensible percent. 27-28% of revenue being lost to fraud is not really acceptable. If we get that down to 5%, then that's going to put 168 million on the bottom line of the mobile operators, and also from a customer experience point of view, be delivered via white routes with assurance on delivery, better response rates, better quality. So that's important. But the other thing that's vitally important is not to think that the messaging market understands how they're going to use it. We need to educate our customers on the omni-channel around rich business messaging and mobile messaging to grow that 3.1% share to something bigger. So
brilliant. Thanks, Andy. So that's a nice way to end things, because we have sessions later on today, both about controlling grey routes and also about RCS and rich business messaging. So stay tuned for those sessions later on today. And we're going to have to wrap it up there for now, Andy, because we're trying to claw back some time. But thank you very much for that presentation. I hope everyone watching enjoyed that. And by all means, get in contact with Andy for more information about anything you've just seen.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much.